In this week's Do Something With Your Marketing, a slight change of pace. I want to talk about some business planning, business and personal planning for a possible pandemic. So if you've been following the news, it is February 23rd as I record this. We are seeing the novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, which creates the disease COVID-19, spreading pretty rapidly around the world. It's clear that containing it is going to be a mammoth challenge if it's even possible, and as a result, we should be planning ahead. Doctors and epidemiologists and folks all around the planet are encouraging people to thoughtfully, calmly plan ahead. Dr. Ian MacKay in Australia published a fantastic long-form piece, which I'll link to in the show notes because I think it's worth reading, about the planning process, and spoke especially about emotional planning, sort of getting the shock out of your system now rather than later. But I want to spend some time talking about what you and I could be doing to realistically plan and to realistically tackle some of the things ahead. If nothing happens, if it fizzles out, if governments get their act together, terrific. Then we'll have a few days of extra supplies handy, and no one's the worse for wear. A little extra planning is always a good thing. If things do go less well, then we're ready for it. So let's talk personally. Personally, based on what we've seen, it's a highly contagious disease. It is more dangerous to the elderly, and we're seeing societal disruptions from a lot of the measures to try and contain it, like quarantines, what's called social distancing. So if you don't have, in the place that you live, at least 7 days of food, and we're not talking like huge things, like a 10-pound bag of rice for one person is more than enough to live on for 7 days. It's boring, but it is easily obtained now, and you are ready. It doesn't have to be a disease. It can be a hurricane, an earthquake, something like that. It gives you a little extra buffer, and obviously someplace to cook it. So if you are lucky enough to own like a little grill or something, great. You got some backup cooking things. If you live in a building or a house where everything's electric, you may want to invest in a little like campfire stove. Be good to roast marshmallows when you don't need it. Enough water, obviously, for a few days. Hopefully, that's not something that should be a problem, but never hurts to have a little extra laying around. And all the things that you would need in case of supply chain disruptions. So particularly medication. If you are on some kind of medication and you cannot afford to not have it for some reason, if it's a drug that your life depends on, talk to your doctor, talk to your healthcare professional, get an extra supply. It was just prudent. And again, if you don't need, if nothing happens and you've got a little extra, great. If something does happen, you're not going to be left out in the cold. What we've seen in other countries, in countries like China, for example, is the quarantines are pretty stringent. People can't leave. In Hubei province, they were saying that one person was designated from each household to be able to leave their home once in 3 days to pick up supplies. So you just want to have a little extra something laying around. But critically, if there's something that you rely on a regular basis, whether it's medication, deliveries, something like that, get a little extra on hand. Again, it doesn't hurt. So, in terms of personal habits, good hygiene, hand sanitizer, avoid touching your face, really the big ones. If you want to get, all the cool, masks and stuff, you certainly can. The one I've been using is it's actually a welding respirator. It's rated P100 by the NIOSH, means stops pretty much everything. I like these for a couple of reasons. A, they're comfortable. They're reusable, so they're not disposable. The filters are disposable. But most importantly, doctors and healthcare professionals need disposable ones. They can't spend time decontaminating equipment. So the disposable masks, if you can avoid buying those so that there's enough for healthcare professionals, these are the way to go. And they're like $35 on Amazon, US today. Business-wise, let's talk business. The CDC, America's Center for Disease Control, has said that if a pandemic occurs, and it's an if, although it's looking more likely, companies should be prepared to have as much as 40% of their workforce either out of commission, working remotely, or unable to go to their place of employment. So whatever you have for business continuity, you want to be sure that you can handle up to 40% of your workforce not being able to show up at the office. Now, if they are in jobs where you can work remotely, great. You want to be able to do that. You want to be able to support that. Make sure your IT infrastructure is up to the challenge, that you've got enough bandwidth, you've got backup servers, all the good stuff that lets your company work remotely at scale. If everyone has to VPN in, make sure your VPN gateway can handle it. Do you have enough of your own supplies on hand? If you're a company that has a supply chain, if you manufacture whatever, make sure that you've got supply, right? You've got a couple of weeks, a month of supply of extra inventory. Again, it's expensive up front, but if you get caught in a bind and local supply chains are disrupted due to things like trucking not working or rail systems not working for a little while, you want to make sure that you've got supply. In terms of economics, 2 points. One, if you can, add a little padding, get a little nest egg for your company and really for yourself personally, but get it for your company. Make sure there's some cash on hand in case there's just shortages for some reason. And expect that, unfortunately, the virus is going to create a large economic drag on the planet, even if wherever it is that you happen to be is not substantially affected locally. It's going to have a big effect. It's going to have a big effect on governments, on economies, on large corporations. So be ready. And by that I mean, as a company, be conservative in your outlays, which is not something that we want to be telling people, because especially since I work at a B2B company where we want other companies to spend money with us. But to be perfectly honest, everybody should be a little cautious. Being aware of what's happening in the economy. If you can lock in contracts now, if you can amplify your marketing now, build that audience, get additional loyalty now so that you have it. Because companies will still need to do business. They just won't need to do as much of it for a while. We've seen a massive economic slowdown in China because the whole country's been locked down. So companies that rely on inventory and supplies and such from China have seen supply chain shortages. And going back to personally, now would be a good time to update your LinkedIn profile, right? No matter how good your situation is, unless you own your company, and I do with my partner, Katie Robert, but unless you own your company, there's a possibility that the economic slowdown will impact hiring, will impact staffing. So just, again, take the precaution, update your profile, make sure that it's in good condition. Again, if nothing happens, great. Then you've updated your profile and dusted it off a little bit. If something does happen, you want to be ready. So not the most pleasant things to think about, something that a lot of people are burying their heads in the sand a little bit about. And I'm certainly not advocating that you panic, that you buy a $1 million bunker in the hills and 20 cases of ammunition per person. None of that. But be thoughtful. Buy ahead, buy now, so that you're not panic buying and not paying panic prices for your supplies. And just be ready. Be ready for the worst case. Hope it doesn't come to pass, but be ready. I want that for you so that you and I make it through whatever happens. And we get to continue doing all sorts of fun marketing stuff. But if you have follow-up questions, leave them in the comments box below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. I'll talk to you soon. Take care and be safe. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.